ate some of your food. Thank you for that. And but what I do know from all of that is that, and if I haven't talked to you yet, it's probably might even be true for you as well. But what I have found is that there are a lot of hurting people, especially during this time, Christmas. And I've kind of said this before. It's if this happens in April or June or August, it might hurt, but doesn't it just feel like Christmas feels like it magnifies that hurt? Because at Christmas, you want a Merry Christmas, right? Goodwill toward men, peace on earth. I mean, doesn't everybody want that? And whenever you watch a Hallmark movie, you're like, well, if it can happen for them, it's got to happen for me. At the end of the day, I get the kiss at the end of the day. I still do, thankfully, and I'm not even in a Hallmark movie. But isn't that's kind of what we all want, and that's kind of the standard that's put out there. And when you kind of look at your life and you see that is not going to happen, it just hurts. And even just beyond the holiday season, when it's something that just feels like has been going on and on and on, and when you kind of look at your life and you look at the future, you just kind of go, man, I don't even see where the end is in sight. Like, I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And there's probably, even if I haven't talked to you, if maybe you've kind of felt that way. Where you are is just so far away from what you envisioned for your life. Maybe it's just so far away from, what you even would consider normal. I mean, you just want something normal. And it just seems so far from where you are. And I just kind of been thinking about that. And what I wanted to tell you this morning is that there's good news. Okay? Can you do this right here? There's good news. Just want to let you know that. If you fall asleep by the end, at least you will have heard this at the beginning. There's good news if you missed the end. All right? I told you that Christmas, the story of Christmas, does not begin in Matthew and Luke. It doesn't. It actually begins all the way back in Genesis. At the very, very, very beginning, God said, I'm going to send a Redeemer. Okay? He's going to come, and all of this stuff that sin has destroyed and broken down, all of the things that sin has done to break up relationships, and all that sin has done whenever we look at lost loved ones and those who have passed on, especially like during this time, and it just hurts so bad. That's all the things that sin has done. And at the very, very beginning, God said, I'm going to send somebody who's going to do away with all of that. And he's going to make it all brand new once again. All right? That's in chapter 3. But the story of Christmas really starts to get amped up in around chapter 12. All right? Because God looks at a guy whose name is Abraham. Right? And Abraham is 75 years old. I mean, that's not even like CW. Is that CW older? Is CW older than Tim? No, yeah. But that's old, right? I mean, you would think that way, but it's not, right, Thomas? That's not old. 75, he doesn't even. Yeah, that's not old. But you might think so. And God looks at this guy who's a little on the age size. I'm trying to be correct now, because I feel like something's coming my way. I'm getting some emails after this one's over. But God looks at this guy named Abraham, 75 years old, and this is what he tells him, all right? He says, I want you to leave your family, and I want you to go to a land you don't even know, okay? I'm not even going to tell you exactly where it is. I just want you to start walking, all right, Abraham? Start walking, and when you get there, I'll let you know, but this is what I'm going to promise you if you'll start the walk, okay? This is what he says. He says, you are going to be a great nation. Great nation. And not only that, he says this, and this is how specific he says. He goes, the whole world, it says every family on the planet is going to be blessed because of you, Abraham, and because of what I'm going to do in you. Are you ready? So great nation, and all of the families of the world are going to be blessed. And you know what's kind of funny is Abraham didn't even know how big the world was. I mean, this was even bigger than what he even thought it was, because he thought the world was just, between Iraq and Egypt. I mean, that's how big the world is. We found out it's a little bit bigger. But can you imagine? Now, we have hindsight, the history, and so we might skip over that. But I want you to think about how absurd this promise is. This promise is absolutely crazy. Because Abraham, if you leave your people, you are not going to be remembered beyond anything. You're probably going to die in somewhere, God only knows place. And be a great nation. Listen, you don't even have any children, right? I mean, you can't even have children. And you're going to make me a great nation? That would require some people. And, unless... And bless the world? Really? Bless the world. Me, Abraham. I'm going to bless the world. Right. Yeah. So, but for some reason, Abraham starts walking. And that's just, we read over things in the Bible sometimes. And I think we ought to pause every now and then and we go, he did what? Are you serious? He just started walking? He left everything he knew? Yeah, that's exactly what he did. And he started walking. But if you turn the pages, just a few pages to the right, you'll get to this book. The very next one is Exodus, right? And what we find is that Abraham did have some children, and this is what happens to them very shortly after this. They become enslaved in Egypt, okay? And now they are completely, beaten every day, killed for whatever reason. They are enslaved. And I imagine... Oh, by the way, for 400 years, don't skip over that, right? 400 years they are enslaved. And I'm just going to go out on a limb to say this, that there were no fathers looking at their sons during this 400-year period and go, don't worry about it. God promised to Abraham, right? We're going to be a great nation, right? And don't worry, we're going to bless the world. Right? I mean, so my grandfather and my great-grandfather and his father, they were all slaves. But son, you're going to be the one, right? No fathers were doing that. In fact, what they were probably saying is, great-grandfather was, and by the way, you probably are, and let's just be honest, your kids are probably going to be slaves as well. Nobody was talking about the promises of Abraham, that they were going to be a great nation, and that they were going to bless the world. Nobody was doing it. It looked like God had completely forgotten all about that. It is right here. Didn't it? Didn't it just feel like it? 400 years? And even after Moses does that big, huge story, you know that one, right? And they come out of Egypt and they are now back into the land. Do you know that for the next 600 years, you know where you find Israel and on the story here? They're either getting into a fight or they're getting out of a fight. They're either being enslaved or they're getting out of slavery. I mean, great nation, we can't even keep what we have for any length of time. Bless the world, are you serious? We can't even, we can't even get anything right. I mean, nobody was preaching the promises of Abraham. Don't worry, guys. For 600 years, we're going to be okay. God promised to Abraham. Nobody was saying that. And after all of that, you have the age of kings and this guy named Solomon. You may have heard of him. He was the king in Israel, the third. And after he died, he had these two guys take over Israel, and guess what they did? They literally cut it in half. Like they split the nation of Israel, northern and southern Israel, right? Just completely ripped it. And nobody was going, hey, we're going to be a great nation. We can't even keep what we have together, Bless the world. We can't get the northern tribes to even say anything to the southern because they're so at odds against each other. Are you serious? Come on. Nobody's preaching the promises of Abraham. I guarantee it. I promise you. Nobody was saying one day we're going to be a great nation. One day we're going to bless the world. Nobody. And you know what? Our story gets a little worse. Right? If it was already bad, it gets a little worse. Around 750 BC, okay, this nation called Assyria marches in and literally destroys that northern half of Israel. All right? And when I say destroy, all right, it's probably not, that's understating it. In fact, there were people who compared the Assyrians back then to like ISIS of today. All right? They had no regard for life. They completely annihilated them, enslaved them, they wanted to wipe them off of the map. And there was nobody in the northern kingdom, though, as they were just being destroyed, going like this. But Abraham said we were going to be a great nation. You know? We're going to bless the world one day. But was that promise still true? Just think about that. And so a couple hundred years later, all right, in 500 BC, this nation called Babylon, they come and they finish the job that Assyria started. Assyria took the northern half and Babylon took the southern half. Destroyed the temple, destroyed the walls, completely leveled it because they didn't want nobody coming back around. But you know what? I'm just going to go out there on a limb. You know what? Great nation. We don't even have walls. We can't even keep our own temple up. Are you with me? But you know what? It gets a little worse. And I can only say that with a smile because I know the ending. Right? But after all of that, all right, Malachi is the last book of the Old Testament. And he ends his book, okay? If you look at it, my translation said the last word is the word curse. All right? That's how the Old Testament ends, with a curse. And after Malachi wrote his book, 400 years, don't let that just, 400 years between Malachi and Matthew, God was silent. He didn't directly work with any prophet for over 400 years. But I just have a feeling that nobody was going, but we're going to be a great nation, right? We're going to bless the world, right? That's what Abraham promised. That's what God said to Abraham. I know that was literally at that point, it's 2,000 years in the past, but he's certainly going to do that for us, isn't he? Right? Great nation, bless the world. That's what they said was going to happen. Nobody was preaching that. It was as bad as it could possibly get. Now, let me just shift for just a moment. Because maybe your life is not on the scale of the history of Israel. But it sure does feel like it sometimes, does it not? Doesn't it? Wasn't there a time, you might have to go a long way back into the past, CW. But there was probably a time where you just felt like God was moving in your life. Do you remember that? Just close your eyes for a moment and just think about that time when you maybe were first introduced to God, or maybe the time when you decided that you were going to start following him, and you have found this brand new life because you had been living life on your own terms for so long that now, and you completely wrecked your life because you were living it the way that you thought you could have or should have, and you wrecked it, and then somebody introduced you to this guy named Jesus, and you go, I want all of that. That just sounds like exactly what I need. And you started following this guy named Jesus, and you were reading and you were praying, and then all of a sudden, it just felt like steps just kept going down. And the excitement that you just had not too long ago, it just felt like your health just took a major step down, And I think about Jimmy, third bout with cancer. And I don't care how awesome you are, and that man's an awesome man, but how in the world he can keep his spirits up? I think it's only the Lord that can do that, But your health takes a hit. Somebody passes away in your life that meant the world to you. There are times where they were your rock, Or maybe there are decisions that were completely out of your control, and yet now you've got to live with them. And just all of the different things, or maybe some stupid decisions that you made, and now you've got to live with them. But over and over, the excitement that you once had is just diminishing. And maybe at one time you thought, you know what, God's going to use me and to be a great influence to tell others. Or maybe you thought, well, God's going to use me to bless so many other families. And now you look at your life and you go, bless the world. Bless another family. Listen, I can barely get out of bed. You know what I mean? It's like all of that is like a distant memory. And now you even wonder, how in the world is that? I mean, is that a promise? Did I hear it right? Is God here? Is he absent? Or maybe you feel like the 400 years of silence is like been your entire year. You know? Where you just feel, is he even paying attention? Like, what's going on? And I just go, I just think that there's maybe 2 or 3 people, maybe more, who feel exactly that way. But that's about as bad as the story can get. 400 years of silence. But if you had your Bible, and maybe you can read this, but Galatians 4:4. All right? Galatians 4:4. Weird place to have a Christmas message, Galatians. Nobody thinks Galatians. Nobody goes, Christmas. Oh, yeah, Galatians. Yeah. Right? Nobody does that. But chapter 4, verse 4, this is what Paul wrote. He said, in the fullness of time, God sent his Son into the world, born of a woman at the right time. Amen? At the fullness of time, which means exactly when God wanted it, exactly according to plan, exactly, because you know what I'm thinking? You're probably more spiritual than me. And you're probably more spiritual than me. Look, you knew this. But if it's me, you know what I would think? I think the fullness of time is in the middle of slavery. I think that's a pretty good time to come, don't you? How about 600 years of either being enslaved, going into a fight, or getting out of a fight? That sounds like a really good time for me, for Jesus to kind of come. Or maybe when the Assyrians are literally destroying our families, destroying our homes. That seems like a pretty good time to me too. Or how about, let's just keep going, right? How about when the Babylonians came in and completely destroyed our temple and wrecked the wall? That sounds like a really good time for him to come too, right? How about this? When he's quiet for 400 years. Maybe that's a really good time for him to show up. But guess what? You know what? My timing is not exactly right at all. And the fullness of time was when God said, it's time. And like a ray of light shone down on a little baby, hope was reborn in Israel. And consequently, I can't even say that right, consequentially, hope was reborn in an entire planet. Just like that. You see, we don't think about all of that because we see the rest of the story, right? We go, but Israel, if you can just hold on, right? I want you to think about this guy named Moses. Moses, all right? If you remember, he was born in Egypt and he committed murder and now he's on the run. And literally the Bible says that he was a shepherd for 40 years in a desert. 40 years in a desert. Hot sun, wind blowing in your beard. How does that feel? It's not that great, is it? Yeah. Yeah, not that great. And for 40 years, though, right? I imagine, if it's me, year 1, that's enough. I'm good right there, right? But no. 10 years goes by, and guess what? He's still in the hot sun with stinking sheep, right? 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. Now, I just want you to think about something. In year 30, where Moses has he is broken down. There's nothing left of this man, right? I mean, he is completely, there's no hope after 30 years of in a desert. Is that safe to say? Would you, so that I'm not alone? Chris, would you? Yeah, isn't that right? 30 years? That's a long time to be in a desert with sheep, with the sun and the wind and the sand and all the yuck. And then, but you know the end of the story. Don't you wish that you could scream into the pages of the Bible and say, Moses, listen, God's not done with you, right? Don't you wish you could just, hey, Moses, It's not over for you. You know, God's going to do something in you, Moses. I know it. I know it. I read the end of the story, Moses. He uses you in a mighty way. The greatest, freedom drive of history is about to happen. And Moses, you get to lead it. Don't give up. Are you with me? And you know what? If I could have screamed into the pages of the Bible and I could have talked to Moses 30 years in a desert and I would have said, Moses, don't give up. Do you know what Moses would have said? You are absolutely insane, right? You clearly have no idea what I have been going through, right? You don't have a clue. Where have you been for the past 30 years when I've been out here herding sheep in the sun and the wind and the sand? Where have you been, right? You might be in the middle of that dark, silent time in your life. But I just want to let you know that your story is not over. And if I could scream into your life, right, that I believe that there's a God who has a plan for you, don't give up, right? Don't give up. And Christmas is just one more reminder of that, right? In the darkest of times, when all hope was gone, Israel had not heard from, seen from, thought of God for 400 years. Rome had imprisoned and enslaved them once again. What's new about that, right? And for 400 years. And then all of a sudden, one night, changed it all. Who is to say that today is the day for you that God changes it all? Do you believe that? Christmas is the perfect reminder that your story is not over. And now we look back at Israel, right? And a great nation. Well, that's not actually that far out of reach. And blessing the world, guess what? They've already done that through the person of Jesus, right? Bless the entire world, every single family on the planet, blessed through Jesus and his birth and what he has done for us. Your story, it may be dark, and there's no doubt, and I'd be right there with you. Man, it's dark and it's awful, and there's just a whole lot that you have to get through. And I don't even know everything that you have to get through, but I believe and know that a God does, and that he has your story, and I believe that he can use you even now to do great and awesome things. I'm just asking you, wait just a little bit longer. You know, even in the middle of all of that in Isaiah, and he wrote while Assyria was coming and destroying that northern half that I was telling you about. This is what he said. Isaiah is pretty popular. You may have heard this one. It says this, but those who wait for the Lord, they will renew their strength. They will mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not be weary. They will walk and not faint. And then in the next chapter, very next chapter, fear not, I am with you. Don't be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and I will help you. I will uphold you by my righteous right hand. Because there's a God that even though sometimes you can't see him and sometimes you have no idea that he's even in the building, it may feel like he's a million miles away, but there is a God who is with you every single step of the way. And I'm just asking you to trust him one more time. And that trust is not based on just vapor and stuff like that. The trust is based on the fact that he was born exactly when the fullness of time was, And he died at the exact right time. And listen, you ready for this? He rose again at exactly the right time. This God who asks us to wait on him and to find our strength in him, even though it feels like sometimes he's a million miles away, he has proven himself over and over and over. And my time is not his time. Or I'd already be in that house, right? I'd already be there. But I have to wait on him, right? Because his time is perfect. wait just a little bit longer. Your story is not over. Doesn't that feel good? It's not a period. It's not done. I know that you sometimes, you look at the 1,000 different avenues and none of them look like they're none of them going to lead me anywhere, but God has one more. He's got one more avenue for you that leads to him. Amen. So God, thank you. I thank you for Christmas because it's just one more reminder that Israel was about as dark as you could possibly get, but a star lit the way for more hope and hope in you. And so, God, we thank you. And so, God, we praise you because you are the one who loves us, even though it doesn't even seem like you're anywhere in the building. But you said you would never leave us and you would never forsake us. And so, God, may we continue to put our trust in a trustworthy God. And so we thank you, we praise you, and ask all of that in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.